Well, hello, driver's ed students, and welcome to today's lecture. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that hopefully you never have to deal with in your life. We've talked about a lot of stuff already that you'll definitely have to deal with, and you'll have to deal with on a daily basis. Chapter 4 was all about driving laws. Chapter 5 was all about sharing the road with other types of vehicles like semis and motorcycles and bicycles and slow moving vehicles and low speed vehicles. Chapters 1 through 3 were all about getting your driver's license and what ID you need and what tests do you have to pass, all of that kind of stuff. That's all stuff that you will have to deal with, that you have to know. Chapter 6 is something that my sincere hope is none of you ever have to deal with. So none of you are ever convicted of a DUI, and none of you ever suffer the consequences of someone else driving impaired. And so as we approach this chapter, I want you to understand how serious this topic is. And I want you to also not be worried about memorizing the information that's in this chapter. The information contained in this chapter, there's a lot of numbers and how many years do you go to prison if this happens? What are the fines if you get a DUI? How many months does your license get suspended if you get caught for possession of alcohol? A lot of those kinds of things. Those are things that you need to understand how serious these crimes are, and that's exactly what they are. They are criminal. So if you do these things, you are a criminal. So it's important that you understand how serious this is. It's not important that when you're driving around on a daily basis, you have this stuff memorized. Like you can spout off, well, if it's your third DUI in a 5-year period, then the number of years of suspension is X and the fine amount is X. You don't need to know that information driving around on a daily basis. So there are a couple of things in this chapter that I want you to memorize, and I'll be sure to point those out. But the rest of those, they will not appear on a quiz from me. Okay, I'm not going to quiz you on how many years you have to know. So I don't want you to try to memorize all of these numbers. What I do want from you is I want you to pay close attention and to really think about how serious the consequences of poor decisions are. So let's go ahead and let's get into the lecture today. Before I even click the slide and move on to the next one, I want to start with a little thought experiment. And so if you want to close your eyes, that would actually probably be the best because that'll help you remove distractions. If you even want to lay your head down while I talk about this, that's fine too, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a story. And the main character of this story is you. You're the main character of this story. So go ahead and get comfortable and let's head into it. So it's the summer between your junior and your senior year. You're 17 years old, you've got your license, you've got an awesome car, and you're just having a great time. I mean, life is good. COVID's over, all that business is all behind us. There's no more wearing face masks or social distancing. I mean, life is good. And so you get invited to a party and you're like, well, I don't really drink, but you know what? I kind of want to hang out. So I'm going to go to this party. So you and your girlfriend or boyfriend, you head to the party. And while you're at the party, one thing leads to another, and pretty soon you find yourself having a drink. And one drink turns into two, and two drinks turns into three. And before you know it, you've got a little bit of a buzz going. And you figure, well, you know what? Before I really get drunk, I better head home. And so you and your boyfriend or girlfriend, you hop in the car and you start heading home. Well, on your way home, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not speeding. You're not driving recklessly. But you are talking with your girlfriend or boyfriend, and as you're talking, a deer comes out into the road. And you don't see it right away. And by the time you do see it, the alcohol has slowed your reaction time a little bit. You reach for the brake, even though Mr. Smith, your favorite teacher, your driver's ed teacher, taught you not to swerve to try to miss a deer. The alcohol doesn't have you thinking straight, and you jerk the wheel to miss the deer, and you slam on the brakes. You lose control of the car. You go into the ditch. The car flips, and you hit a tree. And you get knocked out. And when you come to, and you can see through the cloud of dust from the airbags, and you're kind of trying to get your senses together, you look over, and there's your boyfriend or girlfriend slumped in their seat and blood running from their head. And you're shaking them, trying to wake them up. They're not responding. You call 911. The cops show up. An ambulance shows up. They get your boyfriend or girlfriend out of the vehicle. They put them in the ambulance. They take them to the hospital. The police officer takes you out of the car and starts asking you questions. You know, hey, have you been drinking tonight? Because I can smell a little bit of alcohol on your breath. They have you take a breathalyzer test, and your breathalyzer test shows a level of 0.08, which even if you were over 21 is high enough for a DUI. But since you're under 21, you have the zero tolerance law fighting against you too. The officer puts you in handcuffs, puts you into the squad car, and takes you to jail. You call your parents. They come and get you, bail you out. You find out that your boyfriend or girlfriend died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. A few months later, you have a court date. And at that court date, you're convicted of aggravated DUI. And you're sentenced to 4 years in prison. So while the rest of your classmates are going to their senior prom, going to homecoming, walking across the stage at graduation, heading off to college or getting a job, you're in prison during some of the best years of your life. Okay, that's the end of the story. So you can sit up, you can open your eyes. I know that that's not a fun story. And I know a lot of you might be thinking, you know, Mr. Smith, I know this stuff happens, but it will never happen to me. And that's something that everyone who ever has this happen to them, they've had that same thought in their life. This will never happen to me. But every 50 minutes, 30 times a day in the United States, a story similar to that plays out on U.S. roadways. 30 people on average per day die of DUI-related crashes, and some of them are caused by teenagers. So we're going to talk about a lot of numbers today, and for some people, the numbers don't really hit home. But for, I hope, everyone, the emotional side of what could happen from a DUI will hit home. The thought that your choices and your actions could cause the death of someone that you care deeply about, I hope that those thoughts will cause you to think differently about this chapter in this talk today. All right, let's get into it. So, what does DUI stand for? You might already know this, but DUI stands for driving under the influence. Under the influence of what, you might ask? Well, alcohol is one of the things that we're talking about here, but it's not just alcohol. It's also marijuana, which, you know, now is legal. Not for you guys. You guys aren't old enough. But marijuana or any illegal drug as well, or any prescription drug that makes it unsafe for you to drive. If it impairs your ability to drive, you can get a DUI for it. You can be convicted of driving under the influence. So if something influences your ability to drive, you can be convicted of it. Alcohol is still the thing that most people get a DUI for, but marijuana can also cause you to get a DUI. Illegal drugs can cause you to get DUI, and prescription medications that affect your ability to drive. Even if you have a prescription from your doctor, you can still get a DUI for those. Alcohol is the #1 killer on American roadways. Now, it is neck and neck with something else. And, I do have it with me right here. It is neck and neck with cell phones, distracted driving. These two are so close to each other with which one is killing more people. Cell phones and distracted driving is killing almost as many people on American roadways as DUI and alcohol. So even though the DUI numbers have come down over the past 20 years, the distracted driving numbers are skyrocketing. So just something to think about. Alcohol affects a person's vision and slows reaction time. Let me go back to that. So, why is alcohol so dangerous? That's the question we're asking here. Why is alcohol so dangerous? Or other drugs as well, but let's focus on alcohol here. Alcohol affects a person's vision. It literally makes your vision not as crisp. It also slows your reaction time. And we'll test this in class, maybe not today because this lecture will take most of the period, but we'll test this in class. You guys as teenagers have some of the best reaction time of anyone on the planet, okay? You guys are quick, and we'll test that in class. But alcohol slows it down. So if your normal reaction time is less than a second, let's say half a second, well, alcohol might slow that reaction time down to a second. So we think about that story with the deer that I told earlier. Well, normally you would be able to react to that in a half a second. But with the alcohol, it took you a full second to react to that. Well, if you were traveling at 55 miles per hour, that difference of an extra half a second is a difference of 40 feet. 40 feet. Do you think that could make the difference in whether or not you're going to be able to stop before you hit that deer? Whether or not you feel like you have to swerve? Yeah, absolutely. So that effect it has on your reaction time is huge. One thing I want to mention is that, and you guys may already know this, but we're going to get to it in a future slide here. The point at which you become illegal, the blood alcohol concentration, the amount of alcohol you can have in your system that causes you to be illegal and convicted of a DUI is 0.08. 0.08. All right. This is really important for you to understand. It's not like something magical happens at 0.08 and all of a sudden you lose all ability to drive. It's not like at 0.07, you're perfectly fine and you have no effects from the alcohol, and then 0.08 kicks in and all of a sudden you're stumbling drunk. That is not the way it works. So if you have zero alcohol in your system, every bit closer to 0.08 you creep, the more and more effect you have. So if you have a blood alcohol concentration of 0.06, does it affect your vision and slow your reaction time? Yeah, you better believe it does. Okay, if you have a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05, does it affect you physically and slow your reaction time? Yeah. Is the effect as much as when it's 0.08? No, but there is still an effect. So alcohol affects a person's driving, even if you are below the level of illegal intoxication. Even if you're below that 0.08, the alcohol still affects you. And it's really important for you to understand that. Drinking even a small amount of alcohol increases the chances of causing a crash. This is why it's so important when people go out and party that they have a designated driver. Somebody that says, hey, you know what? Tonight, I'm not going to drink anything. I'll just stick to soda and water and lemonade and iced tea and whatever, but I'm not going to have any alcohol. And I'll be the person that drives so that we can make sure that we stay safe. That is so important. So here, I was talking about this a little bit. BAC is a term that you're going to hear in this chapter. BAC stands for blood alcohol concentration. So it's literally what percent of your blood is alcohol. Okay, your blood's a fluid, and when you drink alcohol, some of that alcohol ends up in your bloodstream. That level of alcohol can be measured. It can be measured in a breath test. It can be measured in a blood test. It can be measured in a urine test. They can even check other bodily substances. Let's hope they're not having to check other bodily substances, whatever those might be. But the most common is a breath test. And so you get pulled over on the side of the road, and if the police officer suspects you of having alcohol in your system, they're going to have you take a breathalyzer where you blow into a tube and the machine measures the amount of alcohol that is in your system. They will not do a blood test on the side of the road. You're not going to get pulled over and then put a little tourniquet on your arm and tap your elbow and draw blood. They're not going to do that on the side of the road, but they will do a breathalyzer. They're not going to make you pee in a cup on the side of the road, but if they take you back to the station or you end up in the hospital, they can do either of these other tests or any of the tests that would check for alcohol. It is illegal if a person's blood alcohol concentration is 0.08 or more. Now, that is if you are over, or if you are 21 or over. If you are under 21, there's a law called the zero tolerance law. And that law says that when you're driving a motor vehicle, you are allowed to have exactly 0.00000. You're allowed to have zero alcohol in your system. If you have even a little bit of alcohol in your system, you will violate the zero tolerance law. So if you have 0.08 alcohol in your system, you will be violating the DUI laws. So there's two sets of laws there. If you have 0.08, you're going to get a DUI. If you have less than that, you could still get a DUI, but you'll more than likely get a zero tolerance conviction. Like we said, you could still get a DUI, and this is whether you're over the age of 21 or under the age of 21. If your blood alcohol concentration is less than 0.08, but the officer can show that your driving ability is impaired, then you can still get a DUI. So, what factors affect a person's reaction to alcohol? My advice to all of you is you shouldn't drink until you're 21. Some of you will follow that advice, some of you will not. But whether you're under the age of 21 or over the age of 21, these physiological things hold true. So, if you are drinking on an empty stomach and you haven't eaten food recently, alcohol will affect you faster and harder. The alcohol will have a greater effect on you if you don't have any food in your system. Simple science. Also, just like other things like caffeine, I'm drinking some coffee here, just like caffeine or just like ibuprofen or Tylenol or something like that, the more exposure you've had to something, we call that tolerance. So people have a different tolerance for alcohol. This is why people who are alcoholics can have alcohol in their system, and oftentimes they don't appear to have alcohol in their system. Now, we're talking about a person's reaction to alcohol. Just because a person has developed a tolerance to alcohol doesn't mean they won't blow 0.08 on a breathalyzer. So the alcohol is still in their system. Their body just doesn't show as great of effects of it. Okay, so that's a key thing to understand. The only way to remove the effects of alcohol, that alcohol has to be metabolized by your liver and filtered out by your kidneys. And the only way for that to happen is that it takes time. It's just simply a matter of time. On average, it takes about 1 hour per drink. And per drink, we're talking about a 12-ounce beer or a 6-ounce glass of wine or a shot of hard liquor. Now, that's a very big generalization because beer can vary in alcohol percent from 3.5 to 12. Wine has a big variety of percentages too, as well as hard liquor. Some of them might only be 30% alcohol. Some of them might be 60% alcohol. So there's a big, wide range there of alcohols. But in general, 1 hour per drink is what it takes for those effects to be removed. So what does that mean? That means that if you have one drink, you should wait at least 1 hour before you drive. If you have two drinks, you should wait at least 2 hours, etc., etc. If you have 3 drinks, you probably should just skip driving that night. Okay, that's just the simple facts of it. Cannabis or marijuana. So, now, as you know, it is legal in Illinois, although not legal for people your age. Neither is alcohol. But a driver may not operate a motor vehicle while impaired by the use of cannabis, whether used medically or recreationally. It is illegal to operate a motor vehicle with THC, that's the chemical that's in cannabis that gives people the high. So if you have a THC level of either 5 nanograms or more per milliliter of whole blood, or 10 nanograms or more per milliliter of other bodily substances. Okay, so if you have cannabis in your system, if you have THC in your system, you can get a DUI for it just like you can for alcohol. Driving under the influence is a serious offense and is classified in Illinois as a violent crime. It is taken very seriously. And if you are arrested and convicted of a DUI in Illinois, there are serious consequences for it. By the way, I told you that there would be a couple of numbers that I would want you to memorize. So far, the numbers that we've talked about, which haven't been very many, but the ones that I do want you to know, alcohol is the #1 killer in Illinois or in the U.S., okay? So alcohol is the #1 killer on U.S. roadways. So alcohol is #1. So the number you have to remember is 1. It's the #1 killer. And the other one is 0.08. 0.08 is the level of blood alcohol concentration at which a driver becomes illegal and can be convicted of a DUI. Okay, so #1 killer, 0.08 for the blood alcohol concentration. 0.08. All right. Implied consent law. This is really important for you guys to understand. When operating on Illinois roadways, a driver automatically consents to submit to certain tests, breath, blood, urine, or other bodily substance. What does this mean? Well, let's think back to when we first started talking about driver's ed. Is your driver's license a right or a privilege? Correct answer is it's a privilege. Choice number 2. Your driver's license is a privilege. And to get that privilege, you have to do certain things. One of the things is that by applying for a driver's license, you agree to the implied consent law. There's no way around it. I mean, the only way around it is don't get a driver's license. If you don't want to let the police officers test you for the presence of alcohol or other drugs, then don't get a driver's license. That's the choice. Okay? So if you choose that you want a driver's license, you are implying consent. You're saying that, hey, I know that you guys are going to be able to test me when I have my driver's license. That's it. So when you get pulled over and they say, sir or ma'am, we need you to blow into this breathalyzer so we can test you for alcohol, you've already said yes. You've already agreed by getting your driver's license. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait, I thought you could refuse testing. You can, but that comes with some serious consequences because you've already agreed to it. So if you agreed to it by getting your license and now you're going back on it, guess what? There are consequences for that. So just something you need to be aware of. Your license will be suspended and or revoked if you are over the legal limit for alcohol or THC, or for that matter, any illegal drug. Okay, the level that you can have in your system of any illegal drug, like cocaine or methamphetamines or any illegal drug, the level that you can have in your system is big old goose egg, zero, nothing. Your license will be suspended for a minimum of 6 months. So if you've got alcohol or marijuana or some other drug in your system and you get arrested, your license is automatically suspended for 6 months. Now, that 6-month suspension is designed to get you to your court case, to your court date. Once you are in court, if you are then convicted, your license will be suspended for even longer. Okay, so this is just step one. This is not the total duration of how long you're going to lose your license. This is just step one. If you refuse to submit to chemical testing, remember how we talked about the implied consent law? If you say, no, I'm not blowing in the little tube, I'm not doing the breathalyzer test, you're going to have your license suspended for 1 year. Now, you need to know, you need to be aware that even if you refuse to blow in the breathalyzer, you can still be convicted of a DUI. All right, you'll still be arrested that night. You can still be convicted of a DUI. Your refusal to take the breathalyzer test can be used as evidence against you in the court. If you refuse to take a breathalyzer test, what do you think the judge is going to ask you? Why wouldn't you take the breathalyzer test? What's your answer going to be? There is no good answer. There's no good answer. So, there's no good way to get around a DUI. And like I said, I hope that none of you guys ever have to worry about this. Make good decisions and you won't have to. If you have a second offense in 5 years, okay, so whether you're being pulled over and getting ticketed, getting arrested for a DUI, if you have a second offense in 5 years, it results in a 3-year suspension. That's whether you're being arrested for the DUI, whether you're refusing to blow the breathalyzer. Second offense in 5 years, automatic 3-year suspension. If you are then convicted of a DUI, so this is conviction. What we were just talking about was getting arrested for a DUI. If then you go on and go to court and get convicted, convicted means the judge says guilty, you're guilty, which, by the way, conviction rate in Illinois for DUI is 95 to 96% conviction rate. That means of all the people that get arrested for DUI, 95 to 96% go on to be convicted. So the chances of getting out of a DUI, not good. Your first conviction is a 1-year revocation. That means they take your license away for 1 year. It's revoked and you have to reapply. It's not the same as just a regular suspension. Second conviction within 20 years is 5-year revocation. Third conviction within any 10-year window third conviction is a 10-year revocation. And a fourth conviction is a lifetime revocation. Now, you might say, well, wait a second. So if you had it suspended or revoked for a year and then another 5 years, that's 6 years of your life you haven't had it. And then another 10 years, that's it. Who in the world is getting 4 DUIs? Well, let me tell you something. A lot of the people that are getting a 4th or 5th or 6th DUI are not people that even have a valid license. They're not people that even have a valid license. So they're already serving a 10-year revocation, and then they are out there driving even though they don't have a license. Okay? I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, but when you get in your parents' car, do they have to show the car their license to be able to drive? No, the car doesn't care. The car doesn't check to see if you have a license. People drive without a license all the time. It's kind of scary. Uh-oh, hang on, that's not right. Let me pause this for a second. Sorry about that. Had something left in there from the last lecture. Okay, so continuing on, the cost of a DUI. Holy cow. All right, the average cost of a DUI in Illinois, and this information comes straight out of the DUI fact book. The average cost of a DUI in Illinois is $18,130. Before we talk about the breakdown of this, I want you to just think about that for a second. Don't do it right now, or if you are watching this, if you want to pause the video and do this real quick, that's fine. I want you to just think about what kind of a car or truck you could buy for $18,000. That's a lot of money. So let's think about this. Where does this money come from? Where did they get this $18,000 figure? Well, first is if you get a DUI, you are mandated to carry they've got a new name for it. I can't remember the name for it, but it's basically high risk auto insurance. You're in a new category now. You know, it's really risky for insurance companies to have you as a client, to have you as a customer, because if you have shown to drink and drive, the chances of you causing damage to someone are extra high. The chances of you causing injury or death to someone are very high. So you are an expensive person to insure. And the law says that you have to carry this high-risk auto insurance for 3 years. That high-risk auto insurance is going to cost you an extra $6,000 on average over the next 3 years. So that's not your total insurance cost. That's the additional insurance costs. So you guys being teenagers, your insurance is already going to be pretty expensive. So let's say that you're already paying $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a year for your insurance, and now you have to pay an extra $2,000 a year. So over that 3-year period, instead of paying, let's say, $3,600 for insurance, now you're going to pay $9,600 for insurance. That's a lot of money. And that's just to drive the same crappy car you were already driving. In addition to the extra insurance costs, you have legal fees. These are fees that are paid to do the proper filings that need to be filed, to pay a lawyer. That's what these legal fees are, to pay the proper filings and lawyer fees. Then you have court costs. So you have to pay the court expenses too. Income loss. Now, if you're a teenager, this number may not be as great, but if you are an adult, you know, you've got the time that you're going to spend in prison. You've got your court dates. You've got, you know, that the initial time where you were in jail. And so you're going to have income loss because of that. This is all assuming you don't get fired from your job. Certain jobs, you will get fired if you get a DUI. If I get a DUI, I'm out of a job. You can't be a driver's ed teacher and have a DUI on your record. So yeah, I mean, income loss, that varies a lot based on the person, but still there is going to be income loss if you have any kind of job. Rehabilitation. This is if you only have to do the bare minimum that the state requires you to do. If you have to go in facility somewhere because you have a serious alcohol problem, it's going to be even more. But a minimum of $300 for rehabilitation, $580 license reinstatement fee, and then over $1,400 for the installation and use of a BAID machine. And the BAID machine is a breath analyzation ignition system. So they hook this up to your car, and whenever you want to drive your car, you have to blow in this thing to show that you don't have any alcohol in your system. So all of those things together add up to $18,000, the cost of a DUI in Illinois. Crazy. Aggravated DUI. So any a DUI, actually what we talked about earlier at the beginning, the start, that would be an aggravated DUI. But if you just get pulled over and there was no wreck and nobody got hurt, that's just a regular DUI. But an aggravated DUI is any DUI that involves death or personal injury, any DUI that is your third or subsequent DUI, any DUI that occurs when you're driving a school bus. My goodness, that's scary. Think about a school bus driver that's intoxicated. And any DUI where you didn't have a license or didn't have insurance. Those are all considered aggravated DUIs, and the penalties are stiffer for those. Okay, so not only is it illegal to be drinking and driving, it's also illegal for anyone to drink alcoholic beverages in a vehicle. The driver and the passengers can be issued a traffic citation. So if you guys are just cruising around out in the country and somebody in the vehicle is drinking, everybody in the vehicle can get in trouble for that. It's illegal. Okay? That's the open beverage container, or that's the open container rule. So if there are any open containers in the passenger compartment, it's illegal. Illegal. It is also illegal. Yeah, that's what we're talking about there. It's illegal to have alcohol in the passenger area of a vehicle if the container has been opened. All right. So let's say that you're 21. Okay. Because if you're not, it's illegal transportation, whether it's open or not. You can't have alcohol in your vehicle if you're under 21. Now, if you're on your way home from the grocery store and your parents are with you, that's a different story. But if you're just driving around and you've got a case of beer in your trunk, well, that's illegal transportation because you're under the age of 21. Okay, so if you have an open alcoholic beverage, let's say you're over the age of 21 and you're going to go over to your friend's house for a party and you're going to stay the night, and so you're taking some beverages with you. Well, if you've got bottles of something and the seal has been broken, okay, whatever it's a bottle of, if the seal has been broken, that has to be in the trunk or in the bed of the pickup truck or something. It cannot be in the passenger compartment. If it is unopened and you're over the age of 21, okay, so you're over the age of 21 and you're just going to the grocery store and you pick up a little bit of beer while you're at the grocery store, it can be in the passenger compartment. It can be in the back seat as long as it's unopened. All right. Contributing to a DUI, it is illegal for drivers to allow their vehicle to be driven by someone they know to be under the influence. So you are not allowed to let someone else drive your vehicle if they've been drinking. Drivers who are under the age of 21 and convicted of a DUI face the revocation of driving privileges for a minimum of 2 years. So if you're over the age of 21, it's a minimum of 1 year. If you're under the age of 21, it's a minimum of 2 years. You don't have to memorize that. Okay, just know that the penalties are stiffer if you're under age of 21. Here's that zero tolerance law that I mentioned earlier, and this is a number that you got to remember. The number is 0. If you're under the age of 21, you are allowed to have 0 alcohol in your system if you are driving. Otherwise, your driving privileges will be suspended for a minimum of 3 months, and you're going to have to go to court. Excuse me. Some other things, these don't even have to be driving related. But remember, we said that driving is a privilege. And there are certain things that you do that are not driving related that can cause that privilege to get taken away. Some of the things involve alcohol. So if you're convicted of illegal consumption, purchase, possession, or receiving alcohol as a gift, you will lose your driving privileges, even if you're not driving when this happens. The most common way that this happens is you go to a drinking party, an underage drinking party. You don't even have to be the one drinking. If you are just there, you are considered in possession. That's considered in possession of alcohol. If you're at an underage drinking party, so you're at a party where underage drinking is occurring, if you get busted, you're considered in possession and you will be ticketed and you will lose your license. Okay? You don't even have to be driving for this to apply to you. All right. Hey, a lot of information today. Like I said, I don't want you to try to memorize the fines and the years and all of that kind of stuff. But I do want you to understand how serious this problem can be and how the consequences can be lifelong. Even when people get past the point of paying the fines and serving the jail time, they still have this on their permanent record. This is a conviction that doesn't go away. It's a felony. And, God forbid somebody gets hurt or killed, you have to think about that for the rest of your life. So please, like I said, my sincere hope is that none of you ever have to deal with this in your life. Okay. So thanks for tuning into the lecture today. I hope you learned something, but even if you didn't, just like my favorite professor, Dr. Phillips, used to say, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye. We'll see you.